Now, typically, when a product gets a yearly generation upgrade, people would usually compare the same size laptop to see their differences. Well, that makes sense. But what if you are weird like me, who wanted a size upgrade too? Well, this video is for you after making the switch from the 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro to the 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro after using it daily for a month. Now, like most of my in-depth long-term reviews, I'm going to be sharing my honest, no-nonsense experience using the 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro for my everyday task. So there's no fancy jargon or any technical terms, just real talk about how this laptop performed in my everyday use after using it for a month. And just for context, here are the specs for both laptops on what was on the 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro and the 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro, so feel free to pause this video if you like to see the exact specs. Alright, if you have been keeping up with the MacBook Pro scene, you know that this generation M2 Max chips are more of a processor upgrade and a very minor updates when it comes to the hardware, like having a better HDMI 2.1 port, which can connect up to an 8K display through HDMI and a way higher frame rate on a 4K display. Other than that, it is pretty much the same. Now, you may be wondering why I decided to upgrade from the 14 to the 16-inch very soon. Was it because of that sweet new Apple product smell?
Nice.
Well, partially. Because, sometimes you got to scratch that upgrade itch. Now, yes, I know it seems like I did spend 17,999 ringgit just to experience a smell that goes away literally in minutes after unboxing, just for an itch as well. But hey, I'm no bangsawan, okay? Put a description on what bangsawan means, because I'm a bangsa too. Get it? Mix of two races. Now, the most noticeable change and the reason that I changed to the 16-inch is, well, bigger size and bigger everything. Now, this 16-inch screen is the same mini LED panel as the 14-inch but larger. Now, here's where you might be wondering, wait, just 2-inch difference? That much only? Well, when we talk about the screen size, it is the area which is what's important, and it translates to a 30% more screen real estate. Now, that means that I can fit more things on the screen without needing an external display, and for my use case, I found it super helpful when I was scripting my videos on the go, having my notes and the specs on one side and my script on the other. So yes, having this 16:10 aspect ratio screen was indeed a godsend for productivity. Now, not only do I have more screen real estate for multitasking, but I don't have to squint like this when I'm looking at the screen for a very, very long time. Trust me, I need all the help I can, since all of this white hairs does represent my age. But enough of my aging process. Let's talk about how it was extremely helpful when I was video editing. Because my workflow involves a lot of color grading and also audio editing as well. So with this kind of a screen real estate, I could have the scopes, the browser, inspector, and the preview, and of course the long timeline all open at once in Final Cut Pro 10, making it super easy for video editing. Now, of course, this obviously applies for other video editing softwares like DaVinci Resolve, or even if you're unfortunate enough to be using Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, with a bigger screen, I also find myself watching more YouTube videos, especially Disney+. But it's not just the visual experience that has been improved with this bigger screen. The sound quality is a total game changer too. And I'm talking about more bass, more volume, and a better overall sound experience. Now, I'm not just blowing some hot air over here, because I am going to give you a quick sound test for you to hear a difference between the 14-inch and also the 16-inch models. So put your best headphones or earbuds to get the full exact experience.
Do I deal with what I'm feeling? Maybe I just don't. How do I deal with what I'm feeling? Maybe I just don't.
But you have removed your helmet. But you have removed your helmet.
So, huge difference, right? And speaking of differences, can we talk about the difference that it would make that if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel? I mean, I'm not saying that it'll change your life or anything, but it will definitely make my day. Plus, you'll get more entertaining and informative reviews like this one. Now, if you really want to be part of the Lobo gang, then check out our written review at www.adamlobo.tv and also join our Discord server, where we've got a bunch of cool people in there. And you can get early access to exclusive content and behind the scenes pics. So let's make some noise together! All the links will be in the description below, and thank you very much in advance. Then on the final reason why the screen has played a huge role in my video editing, because usually I would hook it up to the studio display whenever I'm in a studio, but this time around I hardly find myself doing it because of how huge the screen is. And for me to have even more of a portable setup without bringing my studio display all around with me, I can always use the iPad Pro to complement this amazing 16-inch screen, because with that, using it as an external display, it is a very powerful and portable editing setup. Now, speaking of traveling, here's where the battery performance also came in extremely useful too. Now, this 16-inch has a 100 watt-hour built-in battery, where fun fact is the maximum allowed in a plane, so which means that it is just nice for you to bring it on the plane as well, as it is the maximum allowed by the FAA or Federal Aviation Administration, and is also 30 watt-hour more than the 14-inch variant. Now, if you do the math, you'll be wondering, hey, that's only about 30 watt-hour different. Would you even notice that kind of difference? Well, the short answer to that is yes. Now, recently I did an Instagram reel about how I had a hosting gig outstation in Penang, and I panicked because I forgot to bring my charger, and I was floored by the amazing battery performance. Now, the battery life was so good that I could play back music during the event, transfer huge files after my shoot, convert footages from B-RAW or Blackmagic RAW to ProRes 422, and render out my 6K video files. And I managed to squeeze in 2 episodes of Ted Lasso and still had battery to spare. And to be honest, if I really had to calculate the amount of hours that I got on the laptop and spread it out in days, I would say that Apple was being humble with the 22 hours on a single charge, because I certainly got a little more than that all the time. On top of that, the massive 140 watts USB-C MagSafe power adapter included in the box for this 16-inch variant was just... because charging was so quick on this monster of a charger via MagSafe at around 28 minutes from 0 to 50%, but it does come with a small tiny caveat which I'll go into later in this video. Now, the webcam has also improved quite a bit since I do a lot of video calls and meetings. Now, the new webcam is much less noisier than before, and the white balance also seems to be a bit more balanced on this new 16-inch variant. Now, another thing which was hugely appreciated was the trackpad. Now, this thing is massive. It's like a football field of trackpads, where it spans nearly half the length and half of the width of the whole laptop, which is a huge plus. And I found it so useful in this 16-inch MacBook Pro because since you have that extra screen real estate, you can move from one edge to the next more accurately than before. And the trackpad was so useful to a point that I don't even pack my mouse when I'm traveling because of how easy it is to navigate around it. And it's even more apparent when I was scrolling, or shall I say dribbling my fingers across the football field when I was scrolling through my timeline during video editing as well. Now, speaking of video editing, the next thing that I'm going to be talking about is the performance between both of the laptops. So whether or not it's minor or major, let's find out. Well, not to make this video into one of those super long crazy benchmark testing videos, I did several tests only on my usual workflows on DaVinci Resolve and also Final Cut Pro 10. Now, the first one was to convert a 12K B-RAW file or Blackmagic RAW file to Apple ProRes 422 through DaVinci Resolve. And on the M1 Max MacBook Pro 14-inch, it took exactly 1 minute and 41 seconds for a 38-second 12K RAW footage. Then on the M2 Max MacBook Pro 16-inch, it finished at 1 minute and 20 seconds for the same footage duration. Then finally, I did a render on a whole entire Final Cut Pro 10 project with all the color grading, text and stabilization in post for a 13-minute video, and it took about 8 minutes and 27 seconds on the 14-inch M1 Max, and it finished off at 6 minutes and 40 seconds on the 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro. So yes, coming from that situation, while the differences weren't huge, but it's still a great time saver indeed. So by now you might be wondering, hey Adam, you talked about all the good things about the 16-inch, aren't you stating the obvious disadvantage of having a huge size laptop? You know, the weight? Well, let me tell you this. that it is definitely heavier than a 14-inch counterpart. But listen, if you're not planning on lifting this bad boy up with one hand like a gym bro flexing in the mirror, then you won't even notice the weight difference. I mean, let's be real, you're not going to be bench pressing your MacBook Pro, aren't you? As long as you're carrying it in your backpack or your briefcase, you'll barely feel the difference, as it's only a half kilograms heavier than the 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro at only 2.16 kgs. Then second of all, which is a debate on itself but is worth mentioning, is that because the battery capacity on this laptop is huge, the 16-inch MacBook Pro has only one option of fast charging, which is of course using the 140-watt MagSafe power adapter compared to 5 different options to fast charge the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Now the debate is that I rather have to charge my laptop lesser times than having tons of options to charge the laptop more times. It's like having a massive smartphone battery that comes with a single fast charger versus a smaller battery that gives you a whole bunch of charging options. I'd rather have the former any day of my time. Then finally, let's talk about what I wish that I've done in my purchase if I had to go back in time. Because as mentioned, I spent a total of 17,999 ringgit for this beast of a laptop, which came with the Apple M2 Max chip with 12-core CPU and 38-core GPU, and I upgraded the RAM to 64GB and the storage to 2TB. Now while the RAM upgrade was very justifiable because of its great performance, but the 2TB SSD storage was not sufficient as I thought it was for my large video projects, because firstly, each Final Cut Pro project files, including my video footage, averages close to 900GB, which means that I'm limited to working to a maximum of 2 videos at the same time. So if I could go back in time, I would pay the extra money for the 4TB storage option instead, because my previous M1 Max MacBook Pro had 8TB of storage, and it was such a blessing when it comes to video editing many projects at the same time. Hence, the workaround that I am doing right now is to edit off a custom-built SSD drive based on a 2TB NVMe SSD and a custom NVMe Thunderbolt enclosure, which I'll leave the exact details on what I use in the description below. So yes, this is the best upgrade that I could have made, and if you're more of a desktop Mac kind of person, check out this video over here and stay tuned for my future video over here where I'll be giving you the best accessories to complement your new MacBook Pro.